Now, a lot of you guys.
Twitch TV/BenMoRax.
I've been the one pissing in this guy's cornflakes. But you guys been the one pissing in our cornflakes when it comes to Detroit Lions offseason. And finally, we got some backing. The Detroit Lions, I don't know if it's a weird kind of ranking system, and I'll let Nick go over it because he's the one that read the article from ESPN. Top 5 offseason in the NFL. The Detroit Lions. You guys said Brad Holmes asleep at the wheel.
That's what they're saying.
That's what they're saying. But according to Ben Solak with ESPN, Detroit Lions top 5 offseason in the NFL. Where you at with it, Nicky?
Yeah, I mean, Ben was feeling that way. He had a different way of grading this offseason than usual. Let me just pull this up real quick. I know we have the Lions specifically, but I'm going to go through how
he said right here, he said he tried to consider everything, not just free agent acquisitions and departures, but trades and extensions and restructures. He knocked teams that signed great players up, but probably overspent and had poor priorities. He rewarded teams that spent little but did so wisely and attacked the right positions. What could have been was also considered. The Browns didn't get points for signing Myles Garrett to the same contract everyone would have, when they're the only team that could have gotten picks by giving that contract to someone else. So it was a net rating of your free agency is basically what he did. And what he said about the Detroit Lions, he said what he loved about the Detroit Lions free agency. He loved the retention. The Lions' lone big-ticket free agent acquisition was DJ Reed, obviously, who replaces the outgoing Carlton Davis III at a $4 million yearly discount. That's a solid swap. Otherwise, they kept Barnes on a cheap deal relative to other linebackers. Ozarike, an ascending pass-rushing defensive tackle who had moonlit as a defensive end last season, and Davenport, who is a good scheme fit but miss most of the entire season with injury. Offensive tackle Dan Skipper is back too, and wideout Tim Patrick. He says sometimes Super Bowl contenders unnecessarily shuffle the deck. The Detroit Lions were wise to keep the band together and continue trusting their process. And he ranked them fourth.
Top five.
Fourth in the NFL when it comes to off seasons so far.
Top 5 and not 5.
How do you feel about that, Easy?
It's pretty high, honestly. I get it within the context of like he said he put in the word like a power rankings, and the Detroit Lions would be a top 5 team in the NFL. But yeah, I don't think there's a fall off at all, to be honest with you. Maybe if you want to argue that Carlton Davis was a better defensive back than DJ Reed, maybe there's a conversation to be had there. But the Detroit Lions as a unit are still very, 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 very good. Like the team that you saw in the playoffs last year was not the team that began the season that was dominating other guys. You lost on Lee McNeil, which is like the lone hope after you had already lost Aiden Hutchinson. You lost Malcolm Rodriguez. Like you lost half your linebacker core. You lost guys in the secondary, Carlton Davis included. This team is still going to be very, very good. That's why I don't understand yesterday, and I get fans will probably end up for clicks, but I don't understand yesterday when we see a Commanders team ranked over them.
Yeah.
You beat the poorest version of this team once.
It was for clicks for sure.
You played a real team and got absolutely fucking destroyed.
Yeah. The only teams that Solik had over the Detroit Lions when it comes to offseason rankings. Ad just popped up as soon as I was going to look at it. Were the Bills, the Rams, and the Vikings. Those were the only 3 teams he put over the Detroit Lions. And just for reference, he had the Bears at 15th and the Packers at 23rd. And again, shout out to
Bears 15th.
Shout out to Pride of Detroit for putting out the article about this article that got me to that article. So shout out to Pride of Detroit. But yeah, he had the Bears at 15 and the Packers at 23rd. And I think this is a microcosm of what I tried to explain to Detroit Lions fans about. They had over 20 guys that left the team last year because of free agency that they need to either retain or replace. 20-plus players. That is extremely important when you're looking at a roster that was a Super Bowl favorite if they didn't die. If the Lions didn't make a move for Zadarius Smith or make a move for anybody at the trade deadline last year and they just stayed healthy, they would have had the best roster in the NFL. And I think they would have won the Super Bowl. When you're losing 20-plus guys in free agency to a roster like that, the most important thing to do is to retain a vast majority of those guys. Now, there are things here and there that you want to say. Did they need to retain Davenport? Could they have replaced him with a different contract? You want to argue that? That's fine. But you needed to sign so many players that you were losing in free agency, and Brad Holmes did that. I don't think anybody thought that Levi Onwuzurike was going to get as cheap of a deal as he did. I don't think anybody thought that DJ Reed was going to get as cheap of a deal as he did.
Yeah, that one was crazy.
The Derek Barnes one, even I know people were freaking out about the number, but when you broke it down, it was really nothing. So I think that Brad Holmes did a fantastic job at keeping the guys around him. Do I still want to see him improve this roster? Absolutely. Does he still need to make a move to push them over that level? Absolutely, but that's what happens in the draft. Right now, with a healthy roster, the Detroit Lions are a Super Bowl favorite, one of the best rosters in the NFL. So keeping those pieces together was an important part of it.
I like the way he did these rankings because to me it's obvious that a team with a bunch of money is going to get a bunch of players. You can do reckless spending, and in some areas, that's what I believe the Chicago Bears did, and that's why they're at 15. The highlights that he pointed out why he liked what the Bears did, it was the Tooney trade. I think everybody can agree that was a very good trade for the Chicago Bears, and Ben Johnson getting a solid interior offensive lineman. What they didn't like about the Bears is that they dropped a bag on 2 defensive linemen, and Jarrett and Odengbo from Indy, who they can hit or miss. I wasn't big on either of those guys. So this is the key to me with the Detroit Lions is what I don't love is we still haven't upgraded that defensive line.
Yes.
That's just right now we haven't. So to be at 4, I think is a little high, but I agree. I do agree.
4 is kind of high.
I like that we didn't dish out bad contracts and reaching for players, but I would have liked to see one of those key proven veterans come back on a 1-year deal.
To nitpick, and again, I'm not saying this is enough. I think the defensive tackle rotation is upgraded from last year. If you factor in a healthy Lee McNeil.
Yeah, your guys are coming back, and then Roy Lopez is kind of a dog.
Roy Lopez is a very good rotational defensive lineman. Bringing Levi back in with a healthy Lee McNeil, I think that'll be better. But I agree with you. You still need to make I don't want to say a splash piece on the defensive line.
Just upgrade.
But you need an upgrade. And they're going to get one. They're going to get one in the draft. They're going to get an edge rusher, and he's going to be good. I have the utmost faith in that. And you look at that. So if I told you the rotation of edge rushers opposite Aiden Hutchinson was Davenport, Muhammad, Pascal, and a rookie, how would you feel about that?
Kind of what you had last year.
Yeah.
And last year you said,
except you didn't have a first round talent, a first round rookie. I'll change it to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't know what it's going to be yet, but yeah. Now you're fine with that. That's an upgrade if you do get the first round rookie. But the Detroit Lions are a very good team. I don't think anybody should have been tripping. I think a lot of these pieces, I said it before, I don't know if a lot of these guys will make the team.
Yeah.
You just re-sign guys that have been here before. I think there are a lot of key guys you also re-signed too. Tim Patrick being one. I think that's a key guy you had to keep. He was very clutch in certain moments. I think he's a great red zone target. I think he's a great target to go to on 3rd and long. Yeah. And you obviously go out there and just grab it if you're in a contested situation. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I love him, but he's not. I always want to ask him to do that. Mm-hmm. Throw up a 50-50 ball with him. The other piece they kept, I think, is very, very important was Marcus Davenport. I think when healthy, he could be a wrecking ball for you. And he's going to be the guy to clean up on Aiden Hutchinson sacks. But to be honest with you, the way they even line Aiden Hutchinson up, he's more so on the outside where he's probably more likely to see the single coverage. And you want Marcus Davenport eating that double team.
Yeah, Wingo. I didn't even mention Wingo, too.
We're going to come back at some point in the season. But he might be.
I don't want Lions fans to think of the team they saw in the Commanders game and draw your bases from there.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not your team.
That's what I said to begin this.
Yeah, that's not your team.
What you saw in the playoffs is not what we're dealing with right now.
Again, I'll go out on a limb and say they won't have as many injured players as they did last year. They're still going to suffer injuries. Everybody does. But you can hope that it's not to as many key players and key components to that defense as they did. I think if you have...
I wouldn't rank them top 5, though. That was... kind of confused on the rankings, just a bit, but
like I said, it's the retention of. I think the reason he did it was because of the retention of 20 players, and you didn't give out any bad contracts. All the contracts you gave out were great contracts.
Phenomenal contracts.
It's not like you overpaid to keep anybody. You underpaid for some guys. And Derek Barnes, people thought that was a bad contract at first, but when you break it down, it's extremely reasonable for what he does.
Yeah. Steve O'Baby. Easy, good teams with trophies. Yes, they're a good team, but I want to see the Lions hold that Lombardi. I do too. When you lose half your team,
it's not easy.
Reserve. It's not going to happen.
The number
it's
one
not
reason,
easy. It's just not going to happen. Like your expectations were way out of line.
Yeah. The number one reason the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl last year was not them acquiring Saquon Barkley. It was not them drafting Jalen Carter.
It was the fact they're all
available. It was the fact that they had 21 of 22 day one starters playing in that Super Bowl. That's why they won the Super Bowl. 21 of 22 day one starters for the Eagles played in the Super Bowl. If the Lions had 21 of 22 day one starters playing against the Commanders, they beat them by 30.